Distinguished participants watching and listening us in front of their screens, with the cooperation of the Aegean Economic Development Foundation and Özgenci Group, with the support of the Izmir Metropolitan Municipality, and with the strategic partnership of Izmir Chamber of Commerce, Aegean Exporters Associations İzdoğa, with the session sponsorship of the Izmir Industrialists and Businessmen Association, Izmir Commodity Exchange, Aegean Industrialists and Businessmen Association, and the Union of Chambers of Tradesmen and Craftsmen of Izmir, with the main sponsorship of Cimentaş Group, Aegean Region Chamber of Industry, Aegean Young Businessmen Association, Aegean Free Zone founder and operator Pınar Wheeler Turkey, with the support of Zorlu, with the sponsorship of Dünya Newspaper Live Broadcast, sponsored by Bersel Communication Group Media Relations, and with the press sponsorship of Özlem Newspaper. Welcome to the last session of today. Before the session, I would like to remind you that we have simultaneous translation available in our session. Our guests who want to listen to the broadcast completely in English can switch to the YouTube channel of the Aegean Economic Forum. And by the way, you can also access to this, the program of the Aegean Economic Forum for today and for tomorrow, or current announcement from the Aegean Economic can be followed by the forums of social media. We'll be tomorrow with you again. And the strategic partner of İzdoğa hosts the session titled The Rebirth of Geddes, 2 million years old, and we'll be with you at 10 o'clock early in the morning. At 1500, the closing session of the Magnet of Tourism, Gastronomy, organized under the session sponsorship of the Union of Chambers of Tradesmen and Craftsmen, will take place. So, esteemed guests and participants, the last session of the 5th Aegean Economic Forum of today is going to become realized in a minute. What kind of future does the next generation cities concept prepare? To open the session, I leave the floor to Mr. Mustafa Karabal to broadcast and leave the floor to him. Thank you very much, distinguished participants, distinguished guests. First and foremost, I would like to thank AEF and also the Özgenci Group. And I would like to greet you all with my deepest respects. As we go, Aegean and Izmir is continuing. We are very proud that Aegean and Aegean region and Izmir, which have taken a leading role in the development of our country and determining the economic perspective on the road to our republic, continue to carry out this important task. With the awareness of this responsibility, we bear the Aegean Economic Forum's 2021 concept, which is held every year, has been determined as a green future, and it has been extremely meaningful and timely for the transformation of our world view as well as our country's economy. As we all know, our world is facing the great threat of climate change. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has described the situation as a red alert for humanity. The European Union took a very important step in this regard to set its goals of being the first climate-neutral continent by the year 2050 and declared the transition to a green and circular economy, covering every sector from energy to transportation, from industry to agriculture, from trade to construction, with the European Green Consensus. In order to comply with the European Green Deal, our country's preparation of the Green Deal action, its participation in the Paris Agreement on climate change, and then its declaration of the Green Revolution are extremely important. On the other hand, it was inevitable to integrate the factor of climate change into the sustainable cities and communities process, which is among the main objectives of the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In this context, until 2030 in our country, it is aimed to reduce negative environmental impacts per capita in cities by paying special attention to water resources, waste management, and air quality. In order for the living environment to be sustainable, cities need to consider future generation while responding to today's needs. While issues such as energy and resource use, waste management, air quality become important for environmental sustainability in cities, smart cities come to the fore in order to overcome the difficulties and obstacles brought by urban life. Now, these two concepts should be mentioned together, and smart cities should be designed to include green transformation. As a matter of fact, the EU has requested the preparation of local green agreements at the city level based on the view that European cities will be both an important tool and an engine power in achieving the goals to set the Green Deal. In this context, the EU plans for the green transformation of the cities are integrated into the roadmaps of smart cities. According to the UN Habitat data, although cities cover only 2% of the planet's surface, they are responsible for 70% of greenhouse gas emissions, consuming 66% of the world's energy and producing 70% of waste. In other words, the epicenter of green transformation, both as a problem and as a solution, is still cities. At this point, the green cities concept gains importance, and it is necessary to plan with a holistic, comprehensive, and inclusive approach at both the central and local levels on how to implement and disseminate it, from reducing greenhouse gases in cities to the management of water resources, from the correct use of rainwater to reduce the flow of polluted water, from the planning of human settlements to energy use, from the integration of climate change data to city plans, in many different areas that require specialization, determining measures according to the characteristics of cities, socio-economic conditions, allocation of resources, and application of good practices will shape our future. Now, Spawn City and 15-minute city projects have started to be implemented in developed societies. It is a fact that in our country, issues such as waste management, environmental control, environmental noise, natural and historical preservation, air quality, bicycle paths, sustainable green building, and energy efficiency are both on our agenda and in various regulations recently. However, it is essential to raise awareness in order to transform the minds of these issues, to raise children and young people with this awareness, to reproduce and develop good practices. Along with the mentality of transformation, urban development needs to be redefined and planned. And in a sense, the main purpose is to increase the quality of life in the face of threats to our world. The concept of quality of life has now become the common value in humanity and has become one of the main indicators of development comparison between societies. With these thoughts, I wish the Aegean Economic Forum to be a driving force for the future of our country and to guide the development of awareness and sense the responsibility in our country. And I would like to express my pleasure to have come together on the next generation cities concept. In conclusion, I would like to thank you for all your participation and extend my most sincere wishes. We would like to thank Ms. Mustafa Karabala and distinguished guests. I now would like to invite today's moderator, Mr. Hakan Güldağ, chairman of the Dünya newspaper. And I also would like to invite Mr. Faruk Göksu, co-founder of Urban Strategy. I also would like to invite Mr. Mehmet Sami Kılıç, country director, Turner International Turkey, and chairman of Turkish Green Building Council. Mr. Fatih Sivri, board member of AEGEF, and Dr. Sibel Stoya, head of BPIE Berlin, Buildings Performance Institute Europe, and Haluk Sur, chairman, Cancer, Urban Transformation and Urbanization Foundation. Thank you very much, Ms. Ebru. Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction. Mr. Mustafa Karabağlı has given a lot of information, and on the other hand, he has also built up the framework of very important aspects that we're going to be talking in this afternoon. And first and foremost, I would like to greet you all with my deepest respects on behalf of my panel. And we are also the live broadcast sponsor of this Aegean Economic Forum. And we are very happy to be here with you amongst friends. And some of our friends amongst us were also available. We're also actually making speeches last year, and they have made very important evaluations at that period of time. Let's see what they are now thinking and in today's world. I really am very curious on what we are going to hear today. I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting and very enjoyable panel. We have time, of course, but of course we need to say time from, we need to also save time. It's also very much important because our guests might be also asking questions and I can ask questions. So we want also a little bit more time to actually debate on these matters. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Faruk Göksu. Mr. Göksu, last year we were together again, and Mr. Mustafa Karabağlı has said, actually has made a definition which I find important. Well, in the center, in our focus, we will again have the cities. Of course, the green economy, the green transformation, its environmental activities, they all are actually focusing cities in the periphery. So let me ask this question. We are talking about new generation cities. What is this concept bringing us in the future? What are the main trends? What is the main tendency going forward to? What type of changes has occurred since last year? The floor is yours, sir. Thank you. And as you said, Mr. Mustafa Karabağlı made a wonderful framework of the general issue and has pointed out to important things. And in the past, in the last year's conference, I was talking about smart cities, new age cities, and I was talking about the trends and transit effect on the cities. But now, of course, we had the pandemic indeed, but now post-pandemic, all the concepts that you were talking about right now is also been realized by the policymakers and by the decision makers. Now they are being handled. So climate change, carbon emissions, and all of the subjects that we know right now is also in the agenda of the policymakers. So it's an inevitable situation. So rather than talking, we now start to actually working on this, don't we? Yes, because COVID gave this message. What type of a message did it give? COVID is regarded basically a health problem, indeed. And then if we just think about this solely and singularly as a health problem, we realize that we couldn't solve anything. The governments, the decision givers were actually in conflict. And if COVID is a system crisis, is regarded as a system crisis, then we can talk about a different type of a city structure. What is left from COVID? For instance, health systems have been disrupted, educational systems have been disrupted, the economic systems have disrupted. So the problem is on how to design the cities and all these structures. The cities do have their own systems, and the world cities have their own systems, but the whole world is debating on this matter. The urban, how can we actually redesign the urban systems by taking into the consideration of environmental pollutions and change of climate? And how can we redesign cities on the socio-economic level? So when we're talking about new generational cities, and we need to talk with the new generation, because the new cities we talk about is 2030 to 2050. Now, a 20-year-old guy is going to be 40 years old at that period of time. This is how we have to actually regard the matter. What does the next generation look for? So they are looking for a better life. It's very simple. They want to be in peace with nature. They want to have an open management. They want to participate, to common decision making. So, of course, there are plenty of problems in the world, And in the solution of these problems, the policymakers have to take into attention the opinions of the next generation, of the new generation. If the new generation economies and developments are going to be considered, one important thing here we have to tackle upon is to design the system. Secondly, in digital developments, and the digital world has to be taken into our agenda. And such futures is awaiting us in everything where we find digitalization, just like in education or health. Or the new generation definitely has to be involved in these new aspects. Of course, there are some certain types of determinants here and diagnosis here. We know what 2030 is. The United Nations has fundamental principles, as we all know, and the cities and the managers of the cities are trying to reach those goals. I do not know how it happens in Turkey, but there is a common target, like 2050, particularly zero carbon emission by the year 2050 is expected. The green consensus, the green deals, these are actions, actually. This is a necessity right now for us to implement. There are 20 mega cities around the world, and 15 of them are beside the shore. So Istanbul, Izmir is also included in it. The question is, how will these cities close to the sea are going to affect from climate change, the rising of water, and due to that rising, will there be an immigration again? We see that there is a wave of immigration. I'm not only talking about immigration caused by wars, but due to climate change. Islands are right now underwater, and that causes also the increase of immigration. So considering all these matters, we need to tackle about the matters on what we should do. May I ask a question? I'm not this is what you say is really interesting, because Turkey is surrounded by water, and of course the general well, we know that Turkey is also mountains and has a certain amount of an elevation, but there are cities that are very close to the seas. I know that there are 280 million people in the world that have settled close to 1 meter to the sea. So what is the situation in Turkey? Do you know it? Is there such a study? No, there is not a study as such. But 1/3 of the provinces in Turkey is by the shore. That means that almost 20 million people are going to be affected. This is just an estimation, of course. Indeed, 280 million amounts of population are actually the population close to the ocean. But it is a great amount of a threat. This is why we are shaping our cities. We need to consider this.
Şehirleri güçlendiren bazı güçler var. Güçlendiren bir takım güçler var.
By the way, there are also some certain powers.
And as city managers, we have to be dealing with them. I'm just only mentioning the titles. One of them is about competition for talents, new generation, young talents, because we are talking about new generation cities. Can we really establish the environments for these people? Because we live in digital environments and we live in the different ecosystem for youngsters. So can we actually create some public space for these young people? We need to be discussing this. And secondly, we live in a globalized world and everyone is connected to one another. Migration is both an opportunity and a threat. We have to also see the opportunity side of it. And right now we are talking about permeable borders for the countries. Geographical borders have become vague, and these permeable borders are creating new stories for the future. And world cities, we know that are actually in a new period, like an androgenesis. So humanity is reigning the world, and it has brought certain stress and effects. So maybe we are at the verge of losing the earth, because certain earth resources could be in danger. How can we balance that? There are certain economic reforms which have been published, and we know that with the ordinary, usual economic systems, cities could not be managed, and new concepts are needed. And after saying a few words, I'd like to conclude my speech. Green Deal is very important, as Mehmet Bey has mentioned, and I believe other speakers will also talk about this. There is a report, Kenan Nurtan, one of the professors, has mentioned that Daktus report. This is really crucial, written by Professor Daktusko. This is the economy of biodiversity, because we have already exploited the earth and nature. Nature can't no longer resist against that, can't bear that. It's not only about making environment green, but we need to also make everything much greener, like the oceans and also forests. They should be owned by the public. There are certain recommendations in his report. Maybe in the second round we can give you the details. And second important professor, Kate Reberton, his book called Smith Economy. This is again a very different example book, and he has given certain examples in his book, and he says that new century will be focusing on new history, new stories, and we have to see the picture from a wider perspective, and systems must be included in everything that we do. In the decision mechanisms, we have to be a part of the whole. In Izmir, in Turkey, in Istanbul, yes, everything could be very valuable, but what is the effect of those events in all this big system? We have to think about this. And in order to renew, we have to create. The creativity, that creation idea, especially this is crucial for new generation cities and youngsters. And we have to create new business doing models. COVID actually has taught us finding new ways to do our business. During COVID, we tried to change our lifestyles, and maybe in the second part, I'll be mentioning the details. And last but not least, the world is comprised of big mega regions rather than cities. So their connections with one another must also be mentioned. So roughly, this is a general framework which is on the discussion as of this moment. And this is all from my side. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And in the second round, I believe that you will be touching upon the details of the issues that you have uttered. And you have also said that there are certain powers, dynamics, changing the direction for the cities and shaping the cities. But we do have needs as well. How to create a balance between those powers who are shaping the cities and our needs? How are we going to find a balance? And I'd like to listen to your solution recommendations. So 15-minute city. Can we have it, for instance? Is it just a dream, or is it something that is feasible? I mean, of course, I'm asking it for Turkey's content. Thank you very much. And I'll just give the floor to Mehmet Sami Kılıç, and I want to ask this question to him. So this is how I think. Mr. Göksu has underlined very important topics, very important trends. But what happened? Why those things happened? Maybe we are discussing it too much. But when it comes to finding a solution, maybe at this point, we are a bit weak. What can you say? Maybe in terms of project creation, we are not that very good. And you are the director of Turner International and Chadwick. I really like that abbreviation. It is Environment Friendly Green Buildings Association, Chadwick. So as the head of this association, also staying in this concept, what is the effect of Paris Climate Agreement over real estate sector? And we're talking about COP26. What are the possible effects of these agreements and gatherings over real estate sector? What are your recommendations? I'm really curious about your opinions. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for giving this chance to me. Real estate sector is responsible of 40% of carbon emissions. This is a very big ratio. For that reason, Paris Agreement's targets for carbon reduction will change the real estate sector and the products and energy consumption ways very seriously. Before this agreement, it was like, we'd better have it, we'd better do it like that. But with this agreement, it is a condition, it is a must. Now it is going to be in our lives, and everyone is very much agreeing upon the same thing. And green buildings are about green building materials. It has been on the agenda for many years. And after Turkey became a party to Paris Agreement, especially from now on, we will see acceleration in the development of more green buildings. And also, it's not about building performance itself, but also materials that are used on the construction of the building, the suppliers, all the industries that are producing those materials. Everyone's going to be affected by that. And more than a decade, Turkey has been at the top point when it comes to green energy. But how can you measure it? I mean, normally, what GBC, World Green Building Council list, when you have a look at that, you can see that we have had many attempts, but we do have too many building stocks. That's why we can be seen very high in terms of green building numbers, but still, if we evaluate it in terms of percentages, this is very low. But I mean, Turkey is a very big country. If we talk about a country like Bulgaria, the percentage could be enough, but for us, this is not sufficient. So there's this new there's a ministry, as you all know, this name added to the Ministry of Environment and Urbanization. Right now it is Ministry of Urbanization, Environment and Climate Change. What do you think, adding that concept, adding that term, will it create a difference? Is it meaningful? Of course, this is very meaningful because officially climate change activities are on the official platforms, international platforms, from trade, commerce, exportation, importation. A lot of changes will be on the agenda. This is a great message. We are very much pleased with that change, and especially our sectors that are responsible for climate change. And we will see the way that we do our job will totally change. There is no escape from that. In each and every area, in line with the Paris Agreement, we will see new actors and structures using less energy. And sustainability is like a main constitution for our lives. And we are very glad that for many years we have been advocating green buildings, environment-friendly green buildings. And thanks to this step taken by our government, we have become much more glad, maybe. And we are very happy, yes. And traditionally, maybe we need to ask this question. Traditionally, building construction material sector is at the top 10 exportation items in the world. It's not specific to Turkey. Construction materials are among the top 10 exportation materials all around the world. It's a very special situation. It's not only for the international cases, it's for exportation. So this is what we are discussing here. Generally, we think that there is sometimes correlation with development and building and construction. we say that sometimes it's too much, that there's too much construction going on. Should it be really related to one another? For instance, green buildings, their emergence, their increase in number, and also our construction materials sector maybe could be leading, paving the way for greener materials. And those green materials could be also used in our country and in other countries as well. Could it be possible? Because European Union countries and some environmental organizations, by the way, environmental organizations are criticizing European Union countries, and they say that this is your concern is just to use this as a development model, not something that is about saving the earth and countries. But they say that this is only for competition because R&D related sectors are mainly green technologies, or green technologies are mainly related R&D. So how can we say that? Maybe I have taken too much words to ask this question, but I think you have understood me, and maybe you can answer that. Yes, I mean, both in Turkey and in other countries, these structural changes are indispensable because we have this climate change in front of us and the crisis. So we have this urgent need to fight against climate change. And definitely, irrespective of where you are, you have to come up with solutions. And Turkey is not, of course, excluded from that. And Turkey, along with its new development models, sustainable and green models, will be established, even it requires to pay certain debts. Maybe Turkey will have to compromise certain things, but Turkey should be adapting itself to these changes. And we have many important wishes in terms of these purpose, because green buildings and these concepts could decrease the harms over the society and environment. And Haluk Bey is here, by the way, maybe as Kentsev had Urban Transformation and Urbanization Foundation head, maybe he can answer this question better. So this is an obligation that sector is changing its direction towards this direction. Yes, as you've mentioned, it's now an obligation, it's a must. It's not something that it'd be better if we have it. But right now it's an obligation. We will continue, but right now I want to give the floor to Fadıl Sivri from Aegean Development Foundation. We are talking about sustainability, we are talking about smart cities. Mr. Fadıl, so within this framework, can you please give some examples of what to do in a more concrete manner? How do you evaluate the situation? From what perspective should we follow our path? For instance, those smart cities project as sustainable cities project are right now something that is very popular, and this is related to prevention of the floods for big cities. And cities could also be much more resilient against hot climates, against floods, again. How can we do this? Because we know that it is increasing. These kind of events are increasing, and it's going to increase as well in the future. It was 15, 16 years ago when I saw a tornado around Şile, which is in Istanbul, Black Sea region. I was very much terrified. In Black Sea region, we see a lot of floods and also hails of rainfalls. So, but right now it is much more disseminated all around the country. So how are we going to stand against this? What can you say? Thank you very much, Hakan Bey, and I'd like to extend my salutations and gratitude to all of the speakers, and I'd like to thank everyone for their participation. So as the Aegean Economic Development Foundation, urbanization and sustainable growth targets, especially green economy, and along with the green economy innovation and digital tendencies, we bring all these different items together and carry out certain works. And I'd like to give you some details about what the previous speakers have mentioned. 11th item of the Sustainable Development Goals, sustainable cities and living areas. So this is something we have been discussing since 2015. After Paris Agreement was undersigned, this has been discussed. A pandemic effects and also climate change. Climate change word was changed to climate crisis term. So with this change, we know that there are many disasters and also agricultural losses, and sensitivity towards water will be even worse, maybe will be even increased in the upcoming 5 years. So we are obliged to take more concrete measures. Both central and local governments right now are obliged to think and plan very seriously. Maybe this is something that we are lagging behind like 5 years, because in 2015, Paris Agreement, everything was described very clearly, but countries acted afterwards very lately. And we know that it's time for take concrete steps. Both NGOs, local governments, companies, central governments, everyone knows that this is a must. So what can we do? Maybe I can mention certain examples. First and foremost, about water. It has been also mentioned in the concept of smart cities. This has been discussed for a long time. However, it has not reflected over city planning and urbanization. It has not been integrated to our works because of the reasons in the implementation. I don't know about the reasons. Well, it has taken some time. It is still going to take some time. By the way, in 2008, I think a new regulation was issued on the water use of the water plantation, water harvesting on the roofs for some houses, for some shopping malls and some buildings. So water is going to be harvested on the roofs and it's going to be used again, recycled, reused. We had this regulation beforehand, but smart cities concept is much beyond than water harvesting issue. Maybe I can give you the meaning to you. So smart cities require special materials used that can absorb water on the streets of the cities, and parks, gardens, everywhere in the cities, public spaces should have some special filtration systems that can collect water, and also we need to have some special earth and storage systems, and also underwater structures from Byzantine period. You all know that these were not made just randomly. They were built for collecting water and using it again. And we are also talking about modern cistern methods. So special systems could be brought and awareness for it could be increased. Water use and water waste are important issues. Certain companies and certain households having less water waste could be given city coins so that they could be given discounts. So a lot of things are integrated. Maybe it's like a master plan. So it's a water management master plan. In this way, maybe many things could be handled together. Can be a solution to us.
Ve diğer megapollerin su dönüşümünü sağlayabilmek çok daha kapsamlı master planlara.
And we need more important and comprehensive master plans for such cities in Brazil, in Japan, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Berlin. These concepts are very much integrated in different parts of the cities. All the situations and the risks are combined together. So there is a certain type of a mechanism that balances these situations. There are plenty of examples like this. Berlin, for instance, is a very young, close city to us. And that can be an example, for instance. And hence the case, right now we can talk about an awareness with the central government and the local administration. Some more tangible studies will go on further. And I would like to also emphasize that nowadays, today, the young people, the qualified and quantified young people, to attract them to a city and keep them staying here in the city. What do we need to do? What does a city teach us? That's the first thing that we should understand. What type of inspirations can a city give for innovation and as for design ideas? Now, a city is not only about the wastewater management or structural infrastructure issue, particularly the young entrepreneurs need to bind to the city, of course, and we need to actually create a lot of values. And one of this is to actually develop innovation centers. Maker workshops should be created. The number of it should be raised. And new graduates of the cities, we can actually develop their abilities, and many workshops, many extra trainings can be given, additional trainings can be given, and we need to create that environment for them. And on the other hand, in order to support the ecosystem, we need to find that also a society that creates knowledge, that creates information. We need to have also not only smart cities, but we need to have also connectivity within the city, the human capacity, and also as for the informational technologies, and as for logistics with its ports and with its airports, new values should be added. So we need to have a flowing information and knowledge and finances and people as well. This need to be flowing in the city. So this is what we need to do in the beginning. One of the most important things perhaps that we need. And on the other hand, we need to also dwell on on our cultural values. We only regard this matter as a touristic point of view, but let me tell you this, history and culture is of course very much important for the potential of tourism. However, on the other side, cultural elements as well, such as handcrafts or the color harmony of the city, the gastronomy chain of the city, or the streets, the districts, the old cities, the old centers do have another importance as well. This young, creative, productive young people should be inspired by this. They need to make more arts, digital arts, visual arts, etc. And these areas should be inspirational, and that mass through museums or through e-museums can actually create a warming up of this whole concept, perhaps. And let me just say one thing more about it, and then I'll complete my words. And similarly to that, of course, a city has to have new perspectives, and it has wonderfully been depicted by our experts. And in order to do that, we need to have micro cities like the urban, the suburbs. We call it banlieue, perhaps, but not exactly like this. We have these microgrids, and we need, as you know, but we have also the micro suburbs. which has been redesigned and which is also supporting the circular economy and which also has a carbon zero energy consumption, and this micro suburb or units can be created around the city. That might be necessary because cities we need to stay away from this eclectic philosophy. We need to have new districts which can actually create its own food, its own gastronomy, its own art, its own inspirational facilities. So the micro units can actually suffice in its own. It should self-suffice. And for the smart throughout the smart counters, smart meters, they can actually make a change here, and around the city they can create a certain harmony. And these ideas are constantly been debated, particularly in Japan, in Vienna. There's studies like this as well. Well, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mr. Siri. But later on, we will be continuing, of course. This self-sufficiency should be a little bit more elaborated. In order to develop the economy, we need to talk about these matters as well, I suppose. Thank you very much. And now, of course, we have been talking about these general perspectives from different points of views. When we talk about cities, old generation, new generation, of course, the buildings are very much important in that aspect. For the new generation, it will be as important as it was before. And I would like to give the floor to Dr. Silberstauer, and she is the Berlin director from the European Construction Performance Institute. I would like to greet you to our panel. Welcome. And I would like to ask a question, and then in the second tour, maybe I can ask another question too. But a new generation, from the perspective of new generation cities, and of course, we are looking to the matter from the point of view of the city center, as it is said before. How would we actually evaluate the buildings? What kind of changes will there occur in the next generation cities? Why we're talking about next generation cities? What changes do we expect from the functions? If there will be a change in functions, what will that cause? What will they be? And as for the world policies, what type of new developments do occur? And in these policies, of course, we have the Paris Climate Agreement and COP26. What type of changes do you see in this regard? Would you please elaborate it for us? Thank you. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thanks a lot for having me here, and good afternoon to everybody. It's very good to learn a bit more about what's going on in Turkey. As the name of our institution says, we're working mainly on on policies and measures within the European Union and the European Union's member states, and looking at it from a buildings perspective, and having spending quite a while really looking at the building itself and how to improve the energy performance of the buildings. We see that also this course is, of course, now going towards improving carbon performance of the buildings. But this is certainly just that step happened a couple of years ago, but we see that there's an incredible expansion of scope of what the building stands for. So the building becomes more and more to be the place and the core of energy transition. It's becoming clear that due to the tremendous amount of carbon emissions from the building sector, if we include the embodied carbon, we've been touched upon the aspect of materials already before, then we know that even half of the emissions come from the building sectors. So it's really important to decarbonize that sector, but it's clear that we can only do that in an integrative way. So not only research is going towards the understanding the building and its surrounding in the context of the wider built environment, but also policy is doing more and more at the European level, and we're currently in the European Commission is currently recasting the Environmental Performance of Buildings Directive, the core piece legislation for buildings in the European Union, defining and declinating how to decarbonize the building stock until 2050. And we see that increasingly other aspects, such as increasing comfort, making city, looking the decarbonization from the district approaches, and thus turn towards more the built environment, taking into account carbon emissions that occur throughout the lifetime of a building, becomes more and more important. And that's where the new generation cities that you have been asking for is where I do see it. So the city serves and the building in itself serves more functions. When we come from the energy transition perspective, of course, the building can be seen as a micro energy hub, balancing energy supply with energy storage. But it's really going much more. One of the colleagues in the panels mentioned earlier that during COVID, we have observed that things start to happen. And just to give you a very small example from Berlin, where I'm living, is that during COVID, the city expanded massively the bike trails, so connecting different districts and make bike trails more safe, and establishing rules, to allow better cycling and safer cycling, which is just one small step towards transformation of the city, and only a small step towards the 15-minute city that has been raised earlier. The aspect when I think what is really important, also looking from the policy side, and when we look at the expansion of scope of the buildings, is that we do need a different kind of planning. The European Union requires from their member states to set up long-term renovation plans that shows clearly where member states are required to show clearly how they will decarbonize their building stock and with what kind of measures, how they will tackle also social aspects, reducing energy poverty, increasing the comfort of the building, and this needs to be done in a more systematic way also on the city level. So we've been engaged in many projects where we try to support cities in setting up those local renovation strategies. And I think we need to think that further. And I think that's where also digitalization plays a big role, is that we do need to integrate heating and cooling planning with renovation roadmaps to really understand where the supplies, can we adjust the infrastructure demand. I think that is very crucial, and one prominent example is really maybe where it sees how the long-term targets that have been defined at the national level have to be put in practice at the municipal level, is the heat planning requirements in the Netherlands, where we do have the situation that the Netherlands decided to phase out gas for heating. And they require each municipality to set up local decarbonization roadmaps, or where they show how they abandon the use of natural gas and replace it by renewable heating or renovation. And this is then complemented with regional strategies, which then have to connect the different municipalities and make sure that supply can be planned, like renewable supply can be planned accordingly. So I think that's a very interesting example look at. And if we look into planning, I think one of the most important things is really to have data available and to find tools and apply the correct tools to understand which data are actually necessary to plan better at the district level or to plan better at the buildings level. I think it's that is crucial, and therefore digitalization of the building stock becomes crucial and becomes part of the new generation city concept. Yes, and of course, when we look into, yeah. Did you say something?
Yo, devam edebilirsiniz. Yavaş yavaş toparlayalım. Sayın.
No, we can continue, but we can wrap up.
Okay, good. Well, it's fine. I think what the point is that I really think that in order to do integrated planning, we need to have a good data collection, and I'm happy to talk about more about also examples to do so.
Lütfen örneklerinizi de can kulağıyla.
Please, if you have examples, we'll be more than happy to listen to you in the next round. Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to the last speaker of this first tour, Mr. Haluk Sur. Mr. Haluk, it happened to be last time again, but this is actually the habit of this economic forum. So this is the alphabetic way of we are listening the speakers. So that's the reason why you start with an S, and that's the reason why you're the last speaker in this round. But however, no matter what, of course, it is going to be a pleasure for us to listen to you. Of course, you are the president of the Urban Transformation and Urbanization Foundation. You have given us a lot of examples in the previous conference, of course, but maybe you can now focus on a few certain matters. The life quality of the cities, because when we talk about the next generation cities, in order to increase the life qualities, what type of policies should be developed, and what do we have to do in order to rise equality?
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the organizers, Özgence Group and Aegean Economic Development Forum. I'd like to thank everyone for their efforts. And this is the 5th year, so this is great. And on the Forum Istanbul side, we will be having 20th meeting. So years are just passing very fast. As you have mentioned, planning is the very basis of everything, and without compromising of holistic planning in the correct formats, by providing the appropriate concepts to the cities, I believe we can have a very smooth process. This is an indispensable prerequisite for our cities. Unfortunately, in 1950s, after especially in 1960s and 70s, 80s, industrialization became very fast. That's why city planning was not paid attention too much. It was lagging behind from how it was lagging behind in terms of planning, and there were many mistakes made back then. So some slum areas were established, and then many collapses occurred. So till this date, we can see the reflections of those mistakes. And of course, correcting all the mistaken buildings, changing the structure from the very starting point is much more difficult. And from last year's onwards, we can understand that public institutions' decisions have been very crucial, and public and private public-private partnership could be much more functional in terms of the development of the cities. And right now, we can see public institutions are much more active, and especially with the recent steps of the Ministry of Urbanization, we have also given certain loan and credit easiness and low interest loans oriented on urban transformation, and tax-related incentives are paving the way better structures. Finally, after many years, we have the green building certificates with the ministry's decision, as it was mentioned before, and the green building concept, green construction concept have become much more developed in our country. It is getting much popular, and on the level of the region, country, and also in the international arenas, these green buildings, green constructions and structures are being held in different and various meetings, like in Glasgow meeting, COP26. Countries, governments have to deal with this, because this urban life is getting much more important, because urbanization rates is getting increasing, and urban areas population is half of the whole population in the world. Approximately 3.5 billion people, actually more than 3.5 billion people, live in urban areas. And along with that, till 2050, on the global scale, urban population will be exceeding 70%, and the world population will hit 9 billion, 9.5 billion. So if we calculate it over 9 billion, it's like 6 billion or 6.5 billion people. They will be living in the city centers, urban areas. What does it mean? It means that urban population will be twice higher than today's number, from 3.5 billion to 6.5 billion. So just a production of 100 watts of bulb, certain lens are replaced, and there is a change. And if you think of such a movement, you can all appreciate what kind of a huge, gigantic movement will take place in the future. I mean, because our globe, our blue Earth, unfortunately does not have too big renovation and renewable and refreshing capacity. It is lagging behind the consumption capacity of the dwellers on the Earth. I don't want to be too pessimistic, but compared to a decade or 2 decades prior to this date, things are going on very well, because people are paying more attention. Between 2011 2014 in Czech in Urban Transformation and Urbanization Foundation, I was again the executive board head, with the honoring and support of my friends. The number of green buildings were like 30 back then, but as Mehmet Sami has mentioned, we can talk about 1,000 green buildings, and it is increasing. And we can talk, in the past, we were using foreign-based certificates, green certificates, but right now we have our own local green certificates. By the way, these are not competitors to one another. Our people can have their own local green certificates, but because for international investments require international certificates, they can also use DGMs or some other international institutions certificates. But this is reality. We know that green buildings or green settlement areas decrease carbon release, but they are not very successful in that respect. So there is this estimation for the upcoming 2 decades, 20%, 25% carbon reduction. But this is, of course, important. Cheapest energy is not to produce energy, but energy that is saved. And this has also been proven by a certain research. In Turkey, under urban transformation, 7 million buildings will be demolished, and they will be rebuilt so that they will be resilient and robust against earthquakes, so that next generations will have safe settlement places. In terms of energy saving, if we think of 7 million buildings, urbanization efforts, and also water management purposes, in 10 years, these buildings will provide 26 billion of efficiency. There is another higher number than this, by the way. $26 billion is just for 10 years period, but buildings are not constructed for 10 years, right? But if you think of it for 50 years, 60 years, 100 years, this figure might rise to 160, 170 billion. But we don't have 7 million building stock. It's like 22 million. So current ones should also be transformed into green buildings. This is very vital. And when we make all the buildings green certificate buildings, this saving amount will be 500 billion dollars. This is an incredible number. It's like the GDP of all Turkey. Okay, maybe we can just pause here and then we can talk about urban transformation and green building choice, what to do in this respect. Maybe we can listen to you later on. Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you. Thank you. Now, in the second round, I want you to be a bit faster. Just a couple of minutes will be more than sufficient, I guess, for your explanations. We can start with Faruk Göksu. I asked, how can we have 15 minutes today? Can you please give us some hope? Can you please also push us our dreams limits? Because you are here for these purposes. Of course, those policies, possibilities are very crucial, but you are urban planners and city strategists. So as the professionals, how can you show the horizon for us? Can you give us some hope? Okay, 15 minutes city is applied in Amsterdam and in some other cities. Paris municipality mayor made it a bit more popular. But this is the message that I want to give to you. I'm a city planner, yes, urban planner. And this concept, this principle was taught us in the first year. So each and every city planner had this lesson, had this class in their first year. So minimum, by walking distance, everyone should be reaching to public spaces. But in Istanbul, Izmir, Ankara, the big metropolitan cities in Turkey, even Gaziantep, which is also located at the southern border of Turkey, we can't see that. Unfortunately, for the last 40 years, we have forgotten about this principle. Due to certain reasons, we have just forgotten this principle. No need for finding a reason. But after COVID pandemic, world has rediscovered this principle. This is what we are having. You are going to rediscover what is already known. Everyone says the things that we already know. Yes, we are going to rediscover what is known, but the timing is very crucial. And Paris municipality mayor used this in his first election campaign. And of course, discourse or saying certain things are not sufficient. We know what to do, but how to do? This is the important thing. For Istanbul, for instance, within 15 minutes of walking distance, minimum, how can you create public space? This is an incredible strategy. This is an incredible discourse, but we need to put it into practice. Individuals, people, they have responsibilities, and local governments have responsibilities, and we need some examples. If we talk about Istanbul, we know the challenges of the topography, but for Izmir, it could be even easier maybe, but we have to define certain principles, and in order to reach these targets, we need to have some small practices, implementations. As of this moment, for the last 20 years, tactical urbanism movement has been implemented. It says, don't talk, just walk. I mean, just do it. Just close the half of the streets and enlarge in the spaces, the streets, venues. So the current public spaces should be made much more livable. You don't need money. It's an act of mobility and mobilization. I'm not pessimistic, by the way, because this is something that the new generation is talking about right now. Carbonization, decarbonization, for instance. New generation is dealing with climate change. New generation talks about how to live in the future. If we talk about future cities, then we need to come up with the solutions with the new generations. Yes, another thing that I want to mention is just the headline. I just want to give you the headline. How to bring blue and green together. It's not the water and the trees, but the blue economies. This is again important. Blue economies and green economies. How to integrate it with the expectations of the new generation. I think we need to discuss everything all together, and we have to come up with some examples, because our people don't believe unless they see. If the thing that they see is very good, they can mimic it very well. In Anatolia, in Anatolian region, we always say that our brains are located on our eyes. So this is how I understand. Thank you very much. And maybe in order to show the practicalities and project examples, we need to work together. Yes, and now I'll give the floor to Mehmet Sami Bey once again. As a new development model, green economy and new generation cities, big transformation are also a matter for development. So we are right now working for R&Ds, and those R&D works are mainly focusing on environmental technologies. As Chetbik, do you have any environment-friendly green buildings association? Do you have any support? What can you say? Okay, I'll keep it a bit short. As Chetbik, we have many trainings that can increase information and knowledge, and we have many specialists among us. And with the new members that are going to joining us renewably, we will have new projects. So environment-friendly buildings, and actually this is something that everyone knows, like the previous speaker has mentioned. So after this point, I think environment-friendly cities are going to be indispensable because it's a must again. So our works will continue in this respect, but it is not something that can be handled by an NGO itself, or else it can't be done by public sector or public institutions, private sector. It can only be done by bringing everything together. You said that brain, eyes, and now we have to put our heart as well. Yes, there will be obligations, but when it's coming from our heart, then it's going to turn a lifestyle. It's not correcting two buildings, but it's just about changing our mentality, maybe. Likewise, if you pay attention, we have certain iconic projects. So in those iconic projects, this topic is something very popular for Istanbul Finance Center and Third Airport, and also state hospitals. They are renewed, rehabilitated, and remade, again, the city hospitals. So these plans are very much crucial, and we can see them when it is settled on the public institution side and also academic side, and when it is supported by NGOs, including R&D works. I believe this topic is going to be much more disseminated. I think European countries are living this lifestyle compared to other countries like the US. I think European countries are much more successful because they have turned this into lifestyle, and I think we have to do the same thing. So you're talking about the need for mentality change. Yes, when I say mentality, again, we're talking about our minds, our brains, but there is this relation between brain and heart, and I think we have to have a good relations between our mind and our heart. This is what I understand based on your points. Thank you very much, and I'll give the floor to Fadıl. By the way, I really like your background. Yes, the colors of the city. We're talking about harmony of cities. This is Izmir. This is Passport region in Izmir, and these wavy stones are inspired from Brazilian Rio de Janeiro's stones. It was made in 1960s, I guess, but then it was renewed. So this is the traditional face of Passport region of Izmir. So I'll continue from this anecdotal memory of mine. In the previous speech, previous question, I was talking about design, production, and talents of new generation. This is important. And here, what we see, as you can all understand on the background, this is a graphic. Maybe we have inspired from certain other things. Maybe this is a very simple composition. However, it brings different artistic material, and it could inspire many other industrial designs and also architecture. I don't want to talk about Izmir, but Izmir has very historic places like Kemeraltı, Agora, and we have our gastronomy. Other cities have also their own cuisine. For instance, when we think of Barcelona, those colors directly come to our minds, right? Those great buildings, this aesthetic, the structure, but at the same time, Barcelona is a city of colors. This is how we know it. And we need to, of course, appreciate nature. Green buildings, green cities, water, we have discussed these all the time. Green innovation, especially positive innovation with respect to climate. We are discussing these topics all the time, but also we need to touch upon the real values of the cities, because by getting use of real values of a city, we can have ecosystem, we can have a new economic way, I guess. And renewable energy is something which is on the agenda of every country in the world, and we have 2030 targets, and European countries are going very ahead of other countries, but Turkey has great potential, especially some underground dams and also wind energy, and day by day our capacity of renewable energy is increasing. But on the local scale, on the city scale, if we have a look at that, local governments, especially in the renewable energy topic, should be supporting the projects, and city dwellers can't be just motivated for the use of renewable energy sources, because many things are made on central level. Only local initiatives are at the level of having cooperations for renewable energy projects. They can't get any other authority other than this. But in France, in Germany, in some other countries, local governments have the authority to manage and intensify the renewable energy projects, like smart grid support, for instance. Local governments have this authority and responsibility at their hands. Smart cities, smart energy systems could be supported by local governments, but as of this date, in Turkey, with this current legislation, this is not possible. So local governments should also be given much more space to be more active in circular economy and green economy and also renewable energy. So they need to be able to take certain decisions by themselves, and they need to implement what they have taken as decisions. Their certain authorities should be increased, and this is related to empowerment of local governments of European Union. There is this acquis as well in European Union. If we can go a bit more, I believe we will reach sustainable cities and clean cities target. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Hemen bu noktada yine hızlıca
at this point,
and very quickly now,
döneceğim.
I'd like to return to Dr. Stauer, and she was about to give some perhaps examples, and I had to intervene her, but I'm sure she's going to be talking about some examples about this, and maybe it can be possible to be involved in the samples that she's going to give. But you were talking about renovation, and in the renovation strategies, what should be our roadmap? What should we think about while creating new cities? What might be the problems of restoration? How to fight against any kind of a challenge that can occur. Of course, I would like to remind you that we have limited time.
A lot of question with limited time. So yes, maybe let me just give you one more example about what the support possibilities in European cities are, because that was mentioned in the previous talk, and there are ample examples of cities and municipalities topping up national support schemes for renewable energies and to really help citizens to have renewable energy production, both electricity production on site, but also implement heat pumps. So we have even municipalities which require new buildings to cover a certain percentage of their heating with renewable heat supply. And of course, there are always exemptions if that's not feasible for whatever reason. But I think there's a lot happening in this regard. What I was wanting to say earlier when talking about the renovation planning and the road mapping, I think important is to provide and collect data and to allow for more top-down planning. And we need to collect bottom-up information. And one example that became very popular in the European Union is in Flanders, the region in Belgium, the Woning Pass. It's like a building pass, kind of, or like living pass. It's where the energy performance certificate of each building is made digitally accessible to each building owner, but also the owner can give a lot of additional information to it. So it's a kind of digital building logbook, which provides even information about real consumption data if the user wants to edit, and the user can provide access to any authority he or she may wish to provide that information for. And not only it's about energy performance, carbon performance, it's also including information about accessibility, about accessibility to public transport, the distance to the next shopping center, the distance to the next hospital, education, etc. So when you look into those passports, you can and allow authorities to use that data, you can easily map a certain kind of information and allow municipalities for better planning and for better connecting different kind of infrastructures. I find that a very interesting example. And maybe one last comment on, because it has been raised several times, the material dimension, and when talking about green buildings, talking also about green materials. And I think, first of all, the digital building logbook can store, like it can serve as a material passport as well. That's one thing. And the other thing is it allows also to better understand on a district scale where, and looking at the age of buildings, where demolition is supposed to take place, and if renovation would not be better in terms of looking at the material footprint, really, that would be needed for the new build and compared to a renovation activity. So I'll stop here to allow others to talk as well.
Çok çok teşekkür ediyoruz.
Thank you very much. Wonderful examples. Thank you. And I try to keep the notes. Thank you very much for all the information. And now, as for the end of our session, I'm going to give the floor to Haluk Sur. And just as we were talking about urban transformation, I really would like to learn that in urban transformation, we have been working quite for a long period of time. And I'm sure that you are very much into it and in working in these areas. And within the urban transformation, how much can we give a floor to this new city concept? How can we actually bring both of these aspects together and combine them? I would like to hear your opinion. Actually, this is a total one whole panel speech presentation. So a good money really fires bad money. That's what the economists say, as you know. And a smart city, a smart building, or
kentsel dönüşüm noktasında
urban transformation or green transformation will fire the bad buildings, the old buildings. So
akıllı bina yapalım ya da yeşil bina yapalım.
Let's make a when we talk about making a new building or a green building, it pops up to our minds that people think that it's expensive, it is increasing the expenses. But on the other hand, the citizens or the ones who might want to make investment in real estate, we need to actually increase that demand. And then where do we have to go? Then we have to think about the loans. Maybe we can decrease the interest rates. Maybe we can have a green mortgage loan, and that can be decreased when we think about interest. And on the other hand, we need to also declare the savings, and that the usage costs are decreasing if such buildings prevail. And on the other hand, the manufacturers are going to actually follow the project makers, and the material or structural engineers or structural designers are going to work on it later on. So designers have to persuade the developers in that aspect as well. So there may be different types of groups and units, and they are going to work together. If everybody works together in a collaboration, even though they are not at the same place, there should be an environment where everybody has the same pathway. And if that happens, I believe that the number of such buildings will increase. And as for urban transformation, I should say that in the year 2000, April, there was a conference that I was making a speech, and I was talking about as well in the Forum Istanbul conference, saying that within the financial methods, in order to speed up the urban transformation, it is necessary to have a private-public partnership approach. That's what I said. Well, however, in Fikirtepe, for instance, in Istanbul, fortunately, there have been such problematic things that happened, but nowadays all the problems have been regarded, and now some proper actions are taken for this. The more we are going to focus on these matters, this process is going to speed up. And of course, the consumption of water is very important. We believe that water is a lot, but however, it's not. We thought that Turkey does have a lot of water, but the world is poor of water, unfortunately. So we can only use, as humanity, 2.6% of water, and 2/3 are as icebergs, as icicles in the polar areas. We see that there is a lot of irrigation, but however, the amount of rainfall is just 20 centimeters, and that is decreasing due to climate change. Maybe in Rize Mountains, it can be quite much, but when we come to Antalya or to the Aegean or the Mediterranean coastlines, the amount of rainfall is decreasing. So this is the reason why we need to be very attentive in the consumption of water. What else can I say? I don't know. Of course, the circular economy is very much important, both from an individual aspect, and as Mr. Farooq has said, as for the municipalities, at every level, we need to bring this issue up in the agenda. This linear economy is no longer prevailing. It doesn't work. We can We have to recycle right now. We have to act properly. I do not know how.
Komşunun külüne muhtaç dönemine
So we need our neighbors, whatever our neighbor has. So we need to actually work in collaboration as a whole, neighboring countries or the globe, so that we have to think about it in a more wider range. And without further ado, and without exceeding our time, I would like to complete the panel right now. I've learned a lot from you. I would like to thank each and every one of you. Thank you for your efforts, Mr. We have started with Mr. Karabalı, and then we have created a wonderful framework. And with the structure of this framework, we all have depicted about some important determinants, and we also talked about some solutions as well. That was something that I was very much curious about. Thank you very much to each and every one of you. And I also would like to thank our sponsors. I would like to thank AEF and TESİAD, Özgencil as well, for creating such a wonderful organization, for bringing us together, the Aegean Exporters Association as well. And Dr. Stauer, thank you very much to have you here. It's wonderful. It was great to hear your opinions as well, and for your contribution. And thank you so much for listening us as the audience. Have a healthy life, and hopefully we can have more healthy cities and renewable cities. Thank you very much. If we have made any mistakes, we would like to apologize to you. Thank you. Good day.